is the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham. I almost wanted to pause for a second just so you guys can know you can't see me. But when you first think of professional wrestling, you probably think of Vince McMahon or John Cena. We just heard his theme song, The Time Is Now. But it's actually independent wrestling that's changing the industry and bringing a lot of creativity to the sport. The sport has a long Olympic history and started to become popular in the States after the Civil War. Today, wrestling has continued to grow. World Wrestling Entertainment's Monday Night Raw recently began streaming on Netflix. Violent J is one half of the legendary rap duo Insane Clown Posse, but he's also the founder of Juggalo Championship Wrestling. They're presenting a showcase showdown with Game Changer Wrestling, another independent wrestling promotion, on July 17th at the Majestic Theater. Violent J is here now to talk to us about the Juggalo Championship Wrestling and how wrestling and the Juggalo family grew together in the first place. And also with us is Mark Roberts. He's the commentator for JCW's weekly wrestling program, Lunacy. Violent J, Mark, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you.
Good morning.
It's an honor to be here.
Of course. Thank you for being here this morning. Same thing with you, Mark. Thank you for being here. But Violent J, jumping in with you, what can people expect at the Juggalo Championship Wrestling event coming up on July 17th?
Well, they can expect a battle between JCW and GCW. GCW is a very respected independent promotion. They travel the country, the world even, and they've taken independent wrestling about as far as you can before it becomes something else and not independent. I mean, they travel worldwide multiple times a year. They go to Japan and to Europe, wow. And we want their spot. So what's going to happen is it's a showcase showdown. The show's called The Violence Is Right, and it's going to show a GCW match and then a JCW match, and then a GCW match and a JCW match, and the show is airing on Triller TV, and it's a battle of promotions to show how good our product is versus how good their product is. And we, of course, believe we have the better product.
And how long has this event been going on? Take us back in time a little bit.
This is the first time we've had this event, but JCW has actually been around since 2000. The year 2000, ICP had held our first ever wrestling show. You know, we used to have private shows in our warehouse, and we hadn't yet broken to the fans that we also are wrestlers. we haven't yet broken that really, and so we held our first show and made it public, and ICP wrestled in the main event, you know. But for the past 25 years or whatever, we've been running shows also nationwide, but they've been more or less targeted to Juggalos, which is ICP's fan base. Yeah. The storylines have been wild and outrageous, and the product has only been geared toward our music fans. But within the last 18 months, I would say, wow, we've slowed down our touring, and it was at this point that we decided to take JCW serious and try to attract more of a mainstream wrestling audience and make our product more relatable to all wrestling fans. And so in this quest, of course, the first people we ended up bumping heads with was GCW. And like I said, they have the spot we want. So we issued a direct challenge against them to showcase our products and for us to eventually, hopefully, you know, show their fans that our product is even better. You know what I mean?
And Violent J, you founded the rap duo Insane Clown Posse with Shaggy, Too Dope. And just thinking about the Juggalo Championship Wrestling and it coming up soon, I do want to start with the Insane Clown Posse itself, because you're saying so many folks are there because they're fans of the music. So what does it mean to be a Juggalo?
I think being a Juggalo means freedom. I think it means, you know, not fronting about who you are. I think it means no judgment. I think it means everybody's included, nobody's excluded. I think it means, you know, when you're a clown, it doesn't matter if you slip and fall on stage and embarrass yourself because you're already a clown. So being a clown is somewhat refreshing in the fact that it's okay to embarrass yourself. It's okay to be yourself without worry or judgment. I think there's a certain freedom that comes with hiding under a mask and painting your face and being a clown. There's not much expected of a clown. You know what I'm saying?
Embracing the awkwardness,
Yes, exactly. And there's a certain freedom, and it's very easy to hide up behind a mask, and not have to worry about the things we all worry about. It's like social media is basically you presenting this life you want people to think you're living, but we're all going through the ups and downs and the trials and tribulations of life, and I think that being a juggalo is more. It's less stress toward that fronting. It's less stress toward that projecting an image, and just more so being yourself and take it or leave it, that type of thing.
And Violet J, just this building on that, because I think that's perfectly said. A lot of people right now in our society are trying to fit into molds and put themselves within boundaries in order to fit in with the in crowd, quote unquote. And you're like, no, that's not what we do. We put on our mask, or we put on our makeup, we put on our masks, and we get down. So I want to ask you, when did you notice, or when did you see that Juggalos resonated with so many people, in your opinion?
It's weird. It really is weird because, first of all, our music is it's an acquired taste, but there's not much really to relate us to. So it's not like you can say, well, if you're a fan of this band, you might like ICP, because ICP is so different and so unique, and not always in a good way, that, there's not a lot to compare it to. But so basically my point is, all walks of life you find juggalos in all walks of life. In successful positions in life, you find juggalos where you least expect them. There's really no demographic or no way to pinpoint where you think a juggalo might be. They come from everywhere, and they're all walks of life. But I'll tell you something: when you relate to the music, you definitely feel like an outsider. Other people are like, you listen to that crap, And it's a lot of that comes with being an ICP fan. But when you go to a show, that's when you realize you're not alone.
Yeah.
That you're suddenly with all these people that you resonate with, that you relate to. And at our shows, there's never been fights. There's never been it's not the kind of show where if you step on somebody's shoes, you're going to be getting into a fight. It's nothing like that. There's like this camaraderie amongst fans at our show. There's like this feeling in the air that you automatically are with your brothers and sisters. And we discovered that early, that there's a special vibe going on at our concerts. People always used to say to us, man, they're lining up outside at 3 o'clock. The doors don't even open till 8. They must really love you guys. But they don't understand. They're not lining up at 3 o'clock, 4 or 5 hours early for us. They're lining up early to be with each other, because it's that much of a feeling in the air that you want to go there early, to be around all these people that are suddenly your friends. Because to even be a juggalo and have that acquired taste, and you're with these people that like the same thing, you find that you're the same type of person with the same type of opinion, and there's a camaraderie that comes with being a juggalo. And that's where they started chanting family. And at our shows, it really does feel like you're with a family. And we noticed that really early on, that, man, our fans are very close to each other, and it's this buzz in the air that has always been a part of our. We're so fortunate and so blessed. This was never in the blueprints. Yeah. We never came up with the name Juggalo. We never targeted that we would have this fan base that's that loyal to us and to each other. It happened organically. And it happened early, and it's been that way ever since. And I really can't explain why it's like that, other than we're so unique. And when you find another person that's into the same thing you are, you suddenly realize you have all these other things in common as well. And it's just been wonderful. And our fan base is absolutely incredible. They really are. And I don't even like calling them a fan base, because fans are for boy bands. What we have is what we have is a family, and it really does feel like that. It really does.
Oh my gosh, Violet J. You know, I just think about the city of Detroit in general, in Michigan in general, but we come together in big ways, especially when there's a common ground that we can stand under. But we're talking about wrestling in Detroit and the impact the Insane Clown Posse has had on the sport. Our guests are wrestling commentator Mark Roberts and Violet J., one half of the Insane Clown Posse, a legendary rap duo which was formed right here in the city of Detroit. Now, you were talking about those gatherings and concerts and getting together and Juggalos getting together, listening to the music, but vibing together in community. Now, Violet J, Juggalos and ICP have had a very up and down reputation over the years, though. There was a lot of media panic over ICP's music, about the Juggalos being violent and dangerous, and the FBI even called the Juggalos, quote, hybrid gang. The ACLU came to your defense as well. The Juggalos then came back into the public eye during a march on Washington in 2017. So I do want to ask you just about that time and what it was like going through being called a hybrid gang.
Well, you know, people fear what they don't understand. Mm-hmm. That's as old as time. People see a bunch of people having a great time, and they don't relate to it. So naturally, they think it's something negative. It's something... there must be something wrong with them. They see all these people having fun, and they don't understand at all what we're into. They might not relate to it at all. So naturally, they give it a thumbs down, and they assume it's something bad. It reminds me of when I took my daughter to go to a furry convention years ago. Right? You hear all these creepy things about furries. And when I went to that convention, I didn't see or hear one creepy thing all weekend. And that's sort of similar. You know, I think when they see all these people being furries and wearing costumes of animals and having these identities, they don't understand it. It's something that don't appeal to them at all. So naturally, they start saying bad things about them, and it spreads everywhere. And this must be the reason they're doing this, some dark reason.
Violet J, I'm sorry to cut you off right there, because I do want to just say, you know, for folks who aren't, you know, there are so many different niche things that are happening in the furry community. I actually just recently had a family member say she did not want her child to go to it because of that stereotype and that idea of what it means to be in the furry community. So we were talking just a little bit more about it, but please just continue on about being afraid of things you don't know.
Yeah, well, it's been that way forever, you know, especially if you don't relate to it at all. If you don't see any of the qualities in what we're doing or what our product is, then you see all these other people loving it, naturally you think it's going to be something negative. They must be the bad guys, you know, because I don't know why they're getting together. I don't see any qualities in their music, you know. And really, if you look at ICP, we are wrestling. I mean, we're a gimmick. We paint our faces like clowns. I go by the name Violet J, and Shaggy is Shaggy Too Dope, and we're like a wrestling tag team, especially when we started. When you listen to our old interviews, they sounded like wrestlers cutting a wrestling promo. You know what I mean? Like we went all out, and we're into showmanship. And a lot of rappers say, keep it real, keep it real. You know, that's a very popular thing in hip hop. Yes. But we don't believe in always keeping it real. We want our music to be an escape. We want people to be able to get away from reality because we're all stuck living in reality all the time anyway. So I don't know why the music has to reflect that as well. We want the music to take you away from reality, you know, and I think there's room for that. Of course, there's room for music that's more reality-based, but I believe there's also a place to use music as an escape, as a form of entertainment, and that's what we do, you know. Yeah. We play these characters of these crazy killer clowns, and we incorporate elements of horror and elements of comedy into our music, and we're definitely playing a role. We're definitely what you call a gimmick band, you know. Yeah. But I think there's room for that too, you know. It's like when you walk into an old Blockbuster video and you're looking for a movie to rent, right? If you're looking for something fast-paced action, there's that. If you're looking for something horror-based, there's that. If you're looking for something romantic, there's that. And the same thing goes when you walk into a CD store, you know, for music. There's whatever you're looking for. If you're looking for something romantic, there's that. If you're looking for something fast and heavy metal, there's that. And if you're looking for horror in your music, it's not as common, but there's that too, and that's where we come in, you know. Yeah, it's all just entertainment. It's all just a way to entertain fans, and we don't believe in always keeping it real. We like to keep it fun and let it be an escape a lot of times.
And I love the fact that you're saying we don't have to keep it real, because everyone wants to be, I'm not going to say tough guy, quote unquote, but a tough person. And it's just like sometimes we just want to dance and have a good time with our friends and our family and community. But I do want to ask you, the Juggalos, did come back into the public eye pretty heavily during a march on Washington in 2017. Have you noticed a change in how people treat Juggalos over the years or talk about them, especially after the march on Washington?
I feel like it made a huge difference. Mm-hmm. Because when they put that label on us, and they labeled us when the FBI labeled us as one of the top 10 gangs in the country, we tried to sue the FBI 3 different times, and it got thrown out of court each time. But I'll tell you this, the only way we could fight that, because we weren't okay with being called a gang. We weren't okay with the people that listen to our music being called gang members because they have a tattoo or a sticker on their car, We weren't okay with that. That's why we did the march. And people say, well, the march was just it was just a thing for press. It was just it absolutely was something for press. It absolutely was that, because how else can you get the attention of the people and say we're not okay with this label? You know what I mean? It was a publicity stunt, absolutely, because it was meant to gain attention and say, hey, we're not okay with this label. And I think we succeeded in that. I think it brought attention to what we were marching for. And I think once people heard the reason we were marching, they did think it was ridiculous. I think most people agreed with that. When that happened, when that label came down, stores like Hot Topic and they stopped carrying our product because our product became, gang related. You know what I'm saying? Our concerts became gang rallies. So we had a lot of problems when that happened. But by standing up and saying, hey, we're not okay with this label, even though we couldn't officially be removed from the gang list at that time, just by us standing up and saying out loud like that, we're not okay with this label. I think that was the purpose of the march. And I think we succeeded. I really do, because after the march, things have backed off, and we're back in Hot Topics now, and we're back in these stores. You know what I'm saying?
I was about to say you're back in Hot Topic yet?
Yeah.
Thank
I feel like we succeeded in that, and that happened to be, when that happened to be the only year the FBI released that gang assessment list. So we don't actually know if we're still on it or not. But I do feel like we met our purpose. We met our goal, which was to tell everybody we're not okay with that. And I feel like we succeeded. And I feel like things have gotten a lot better since then. I feel like Juggalos aren't being pressured as gang members anymore. And so I feel like we succeeded. And I really, really do feel that way. You know what I mean?
Yes, Violent J. Yes, thank you so much for explaining that. And I want our listeners to stay right with us. No one is going to end up in a full Nelson, I promise. But we'll continue our conversation on professional wrestling with Violent J and Mark Roberts. You all stay right there. This is The Metro. To the Metro on 101.9 WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio. I'm Tia Graham, and we're talking with Violent J of the Insane Clown Posse and Mark Roberts, commentator for the weekly Juggalo Championship Wrestling show called Lunacy. Violent J founded the wrestling promotion Juggalo Championship Wrestling, and they're presenting a showcase showdown with Game Changer Wrestling on July 17th at the Majestic Theater, But Mark, we're bringing you into this conversation. You're a commentator for Juggalo Championship Wrestling, and you're a wrestling super fan. What about wrestling having a bad rap, or what about it has contributed to you working within the industry? Like, what did you want to jump in because you wanted to help change the narrative a little bit, or you just fell in love with the sport?
Well, thank you for having me, Tia.
Of course.
I've been watching wrestling for longer than I can remember. It's just always been a part of my life. And then maybe a little late in life, finally made the decision to jump in and try to make it my life. And I think my role in JCW is to kind of bridge that gap between the juggalos and the wrestling fans and help explain JCW in a broader wrestling context. So that's what I try to do as a commentator on Lunacy.
Yeah, and when you say that, because just the same thing that Violent J was talking about, trying to bring it all to a larger, wider wrestling fan base or watcher, people who watch wrestling or fans of it, what have the difficulties been with trying to branch out, if any?
I mean, the difficulty is just how much wrestling there is and how we have machines in our pockets where we can watch new wrestling every day of the week from anywhere in the world, plus anything that's ever existed and been preserved on film ever. So, we've got a really compelling, tight, well-produced wrestling show with quality content that comes out once a week. And that is one of, maybe 40, 50 hours of new wrestling you can watch in a week. So that's the challenge, is breaking through and saying, this is something that people need to see and this is something that is different.
And thinking about the impact of Juggalo Wrestling Championship in general and other independent wrestling promotions, what kind of impact are they currently having right now on the wrestling scene, especially the local independent scene right now?
I think there's a lot of parallels with what Violent J was saying about juggalos. When it comes to local wrestling scene, I mean, there are people who have been to the top. There are people who are on their way up. And then there are a lot of people who are just having fun and finding community. There's folklore in local wrestling. There's some real grassroots stuff happening around Detroit that's awesome. But wrestling needs independent wrestling because you can't build a superstar in a laboratory. WWE puts a lot of money into a performance center that's turned out some great people, but it's never going to make up for the churn. And on both sides, both the supply and the demand, wrestling is popular entertainment. You need new stuff all the time. And then when it comes to just having the wrestlers, I mean, you're talking about women and men who put their bodies on the line and anything can happen at any given time. And then who's going to take that spot? Well, there are people, you can see wrestling 3-4 days a week within an hour's drive of Detroit of people who are perfecting their craft to get to that level.
Which is amazing to think that, like you're saying, just here in Detroit or southeastern Michigan's independent wrestling scene here, we could be watching the next John Cena or the next, up and coming person who could be a really big name in wrestling, which is amazing to think that local independent wrestling is kind of like a feeder for some of the larger scale events.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we've got so many of those people in JCW, with being, with having the strong ties to Detroit and Southeast Michigan, the very best people who are on the scene locally often end up getting a shot on our show.
And Mark, talk about independent Detroit wrestling right now. So most of our listeners may not have ever been to a wrestling show. Take me inside of one. Paint me a little bit of a picture, sights, sounds, all of the fun stuff as you're commentating and you're getting ready to let the audience know what they're going to experience. Talk about that.
There is just so much diversity of what you can find out there. I mean, I've been on shows that have fewer than 50 people, and then, there are some that have 400, 900. That's the kind of crowd you're going to be looking at, a much bigger crowd next Thursday night when we're at the Majestic. But it can be a real grassroots presentation. There's a long history within Detroit of hardcore wrestling, and so that definitely happens here. But you can see all of it. You can see technical stuff and high flyers and people who you used to watch on TV every week.
And which I love. Once again, I was talking to Jack earlier, our associate producer for the Metro, and we're just talking about the different facets of wrestling that you can watch here in the city of Detroit. And this is also including Juggalo Wrestling Championship, which is something, once again, I think a lot of folks may be curious about, but may not know how to find more information on. But Mark, I do want to dive a little bit deeper into the world of wrestling. The term kayfabe Kayfabe is a very popular term, and as you can clearly see, I need to brush up on my wrestling. But what does it mean?
I guess it means that you're all buying into something that may not be true. You're maintaining an illusion, and I think Violent J already mentioned the importance of that to what he's been doing for decades in Insane Clown Posse. You're not on the phone. You are on the phone with Violent J, and that doesn't sound like a person's name, but you're maintaining an illusion, and sometimes I think of it as just a mutually agreed upon illusion.
I love that. And Violent J, same thing. I want to ask you about kayfabe and the importance it has had on you, especially inside the ring.
Well, today wrestling isn't as guarded as it used to be. Kayfabe used to be a word used in wrestling to pretty much figure out who was on the inside and who knew the secrets of wrestling and who didn't, you know. And today, though, it's more open. And that's really why I love professional wrestling so much since I was a kid, because, number one, there's really nothing else that is anything like pro wrestling. You have two guys in a ring and a referee, and they're faking a fight, but they're entertaining sometimes 50,000 people, you know, with a fake fight. Obviously, it's going to take more than just a fake fight in the ring. It's going to take athleticism, choreography, and acting to portray these characters. Takes a lot. You got to be multi-talented to be a wrestler and succeed like that. To entertain those 50,000 people with a fake fight, it takes a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience to be able to do that, you know. And like Mark was saying about the Performance Center that is turning out wrestlers as opposed to independent wrestling turning out wrestlers. I think independent wrestling is important because it really shows you who can handle the travel that it comes involved in this work. These guys have got to travel the country and the world over, and a lot of guys train for it. They get ready for it, and once they get up into the WWE, they realize the travel isn't for them. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think when you take the independent route, you discover that first, whether or not you're cut out for it, you know, because these guys, even though they're independent wrestlers, they are traveling all over the country. They're on the road 4 or 5 nights a week. And taking that route definitely prepares you for what's to come if you sign a major contract. You know what I mean? Yeah. And independent wrestling sort of weeds out people that aren't ready for that, you know, because both independent and WWE level and AEW level wrestling, it involves a lot of traveling, you know. But I am just blown away by the fact that there's nothing else that compares to pro wrestling. Where else can you create a character for yourself? You can create a name, a gimmick, a style of your interviews, a style of your wrestling. And depending on how interesting that character is you've created, you can get over, which means you can become successful, you know, off this character you created and how unique that character is. And what else can you compare that to? Like, what other business is similar to that? You know what I mean? There's really nothing. I mean, you can't even categorize wrestling with anything else because there's nothing else like it. The fact that everybody in the building knows, you know, all 50,000 fans potentially know wrestling's fake, but everybody's looking for an escape. Everybody's going to that show. They're cheering the good guys. They're booing the bad guys. Everybody there knows it's fake, but they're super into the moment and they're screaming their heads off. And I love that so much that everybody's going there for that escape to believe in the good guys and boo the bad guys. And it's all in fun. You know what I mean? It's all entertainment. And I love what it takes to become a professional wrestler. I love those talents. I think it's interesting. And plus, people are also very invested in wrestling, not for what's happening in the ring, but for what's happening backstage. Who's leaving this promotion and going to this promotion? Who's has a real life problem with who backstage? You know, all of that is very marketable. There's shows all over YouTube and all over the internet that tell you the true secrets of what's really happening backstage. And all of it is fascinating. It's just as fascinating what's happening backstage as what's happening in the ring,
100%. I do have written down to the end here, but I do want to say 100%. And when you brought that up once again, Violent J, you're bringing up great things that connect people to their everyday lives, to the significance of wrestling as well, because I don't personally watch the matches themselves, but I do know some of the drama going on behind the scenes. So, I keep up in some way. I love that. But we're going to transition really quickly to Mark. Mark, an important part, as we were hearing from Violent J, is that storytelling, is that character building, is that arc there. Wrestlers are almost physical, if not truly physical storytellers, using their bodies and acting. Tell me a compelling storyline coming to the wrestling event coming up at JCW Showcase on July 17th at the Majestic.
So JCW has been around for 25 years, and you can hear in everything that Violent J has talked about that it was subversive and countercultural from the very beginning. What that means is obviously different in 2025 than it was at the end of 1999, and so the product has adapted and grown over time like everything else has. But what you see in GCW is something that's come along much more recently and presents itself as being all of those things, as being countercultural when there were people who were doing that much earlier. And so I think there is definitely there will be issues between individual persons and teams and factions, but really what the story is about is that Juggalo Championship Wrestling has been doing this for a very long time and deserves a greater share of the bandwidth that within the wrestling information ecosystem. It deserves to have at least as much of a share as what GCW does. So it's about that prestige.
Yeah. We're talking about wrestling in Detroit and the impact the Insane Clown Posse has had on the sport. Our guests are wrestling commentator Mark Roberts and Violent J, one half of the Insane Clown Posse, a legendary rap duo which was formed right here in the city of Detroit. Now, I do want to ask you, Mark, how did the weekly Lunacy wrestling show begin? What's different about the show than your live events?
Well, I came on in Thanksgiving of last year, and it was already going for a while, as Violent J said. So, he's better to talk about that. But the live events are the difference between taped and live is the same regardless of what wrestling you're watching. You want to be up close and personal and actually feel what it's like to be in that building. You might when you watch it on TV, you're going to maybe get a better view of everything that's happening and pick up all the story because you have a soundtrack of commentators talking about it with you, and you might hear every interview better, but you're going to be able to hear the crack of two bodies hitting each other or hitting some very loud boards, and experiencing it all up close is necessary. I think everybody should experience it at least once.
At least once. I mean, the way that you both, Mark, as well as Violent J, are talking about it's just like, I think we all at least once should experience a local independent wrestling match here in the city of Detroit. But I do want to bring Violent J back into the conversation. Professional wrestling has always had a big draw in Detroit. What are your first memories of wrestling here and the importance that it holds for the city?
Man, I remember my stepdad taking me to go see Hulk Hogan and team up with Andre the Giant
WrestleMania
at Joe
3?
Louis Arena. Yeah. Oh, I was there. I had to sneak in. But I was there, And I remember calling Shaggy on a payphone and saying, "Man, I'm watching Ricky Steamboat wrestle Macho Man right now," because he couldn't go. And I just those memories. But like Mark was saying, when you're at a live event, you can smell the fog machine. You can feed off the energy of the people screaming around you. And you find yourself screaming and cheering and jumping up and down. And you just don't do that at home watching it on TV. You know what I mean? Yeah. You get swept up in the moment when you're there. And it's definitely worth checking out at least once in your life. You may fall in love with it going there in person because it's two different experiences. It's like listening to a CD to your favorite band or going to see them live in concert. They really couldn't be different. It's two totally different experiences. And I've been going to live events my whole life. You know, I started out going to live events like WrestleMania 3, and I think that's why I'm doing this today. You know what I mean? Because I'm still feeding off that energy from when I called Shaggy on that payphone all those years ago. You know, being swept up in the moment has filled my gas tanks, and I'm still burning off that fuel right now, you know, all these years later.
I love it. And Violent J, before we do let both you and Mark go, I do want to ask just about this upcoming event happening July 17th at the Majestic Theater. What's the one big plug you want to tell listeners or those who are interested in seeing a live show?
Well, I can tell you this. You're definitely going to see the best of GCW and JCW because we're competing with each other. Nobody's going to bring half the effort. You know what I mean? Everybody's going to bring their top effort because we're trying to outdo each other. So you know you're in for a damn good show as these two promotions are duking it out and battling for supremacy because we both want to bring our A game and outdo each other. You know, so the winners in that are the fans. You know what I'm saying? Because they're going to see the best of both worlds. And I think that's a rare opportunity. Like I said, we've never done one of these before. And so it's an opportunity for fans to see both promotions step up and bring their A game. You know what I mean?
Yes, 100%. And Mark, before I let you go, it's 30 seconds or so. Can you give us one of your comments? Can I hear you commentate? Yeah, right now. I want to hear it.
Don't you have you don't have clips? It's on YouTube.
I want to hear it live.
Give me. I need something that I'm calling. I need some action here.
Okay, all right.
You're gonna take a bump on this floor here, Tia?
No, thank you. No, thank you. So that's basically what we're saying now. Is you have to go to YouTube to hear Mark Roberts to do that call. But Mark Roberts is a wrestling commentator, and Violent J is one half of the Insane Clown Posse, a legendary rap duo which was formed right here in the city of Detroit. The Juggalo Championship Wrestling Showcase is July 17th at the Majestic Theater. Thank you so much to Mark as well as Violent J for joining us on the Metro today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Check us out on YouTube, Lunacy. You can check us out right now if you want, and you'll hear Mark in all of his splendor.
This is the Metro, and WDET has weathered many changes in government priorities, but we've always had one constant, and that's you, our listeners. And right now, with looming threats to federal funding, we're asking for your help. Let's build a stronger WDET together. We're aiming for 1,000 additional members to reinforce our future. Join us at WDET.org/give and spread the word. Stay right there. We'll be right back on the Metro.